Let's look at the fantasy basketball waiver wire. Who's been added, who's been dropped? Do those moves make sense? Who should you be keeping an eye on? Should you be keeping an eye on Michael Bolton?
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and my drag name would be Steph Curvy. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Grammarly. Make a bigger impact at work with Grammarly. Sign up today and download for free at grammarly.com/podcast. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. So go and hit the old thumb up, go and hit the double bang. We can double bang again now. It's good times. Audio is back in business. Leave your comments and thumb it up and leave reviews and all that stuff. It goes a big way of towards helping us and growing the show as we hit to Operation 80K, but long-term Operation 100K in terms of subscribers on this channel. So we're here to talk about the fantasy basketball waiver wire. Obviously, we are getting close to the playoffs. You might be 5 days away. You might be 2 weeks away. You might be a week away, whatever it is. We are getting close, so the nature of the waiver wire show will start to change in coming weeks as to more short-term focus. So will all the daily look-ahead shows to be more like categorical specific streaming, but we're not quite there yet. We're getting there. So let's just have a look at what we need to pay attention to across the NBA and across the waiver wire situation. Let's start with must-roster players, remembering what we mean by must-roster. Just somebody should be adding these guys. They should be sitting on somebody's roster. We're talking some short-term value as well. We're not talking the next 7 weeks. I'm really looking at the next sort of 10 to 14 days in terms of just have them on your roster now. Whether it works out or not, that I don't have a crystal ball, but we try and figure that out. We try and see where the value goes. We try and see who should be added, and then we make determinations based on that as we move forward. So let's start with category leagues. We've got Ayo Dosunmu on the top of that list. We had Alex Caruso hurt his hamstring yesterday. He may or may not play today. They're listing him questionable. He won't play, but they're listing him questionable. Of course, that could look stupid when I say he won't play because they might push him back out there, but it doesn't matter. Patrick Williams is out. Torrey Craig is out. Dosunmu just needs to be rostered, and I don't really... Look, he's been a much improved player this season, absolutely. He's been good, so just add him. Easy stuff. Trey Mann, I don't know when LaMelo Ball is coming back. Trey Mann played 32 minutes last game. Just a guy we hold on the roster. And if LaMelo does come back and it nukes Trey Mann, then you drop him. Very easy stuff. You can't make significant adds or predictions saying, well, what happens when in 3 weeks' time he's only got 2 games and LaMelo Ball's back? Well, you know what you do then? You drop him. Easy stuff. But for the time being and for now, we just have him. The next one there is Paul Reed. And yesterday, I did forget to talk about Paul Reed on the recap show, and it's because I was focusing a lot on D'Anthony Melton and Tobias Harris sucking and Kelly Oubre because that whole team sucked. Paul Reed sucked. He was dreadful. He played 13 minutes. They went away from him. They used a little bit of Mo Bamba. They went small with Nick Batum at center. It was a bad game from Reed. I am holding Paul Reed, and I believe Paul Reed should be rostered until Joel Embiid returns, which is at least probably 3 more weeks away, at least. I get it. If you're in a points league, though, I don't think you need to roster Paul Reed in a points league. Very different story, but we're talking categories here. Reed will have bad games. He'll have good games. You're not expecting a top 30 player or a top 40 player. Top 80 is a decent recommend or a decent expectation. At the moment, he's going through a terrible shooting slump as well. Just no shots are falling for a guy that's a 56% shooter normally. He's down at like 48 or whatever it is over the last 7 games. That's going to bounce back up. We know that he's got the ability to put up numbers. There will be bad games mixed in there. Absolutely. I just think he should be rostered. And if you don't, that's fine. Marvin Bagley. He started out the time after the trade deadline not well. A couple of low-minute games and people were a bit panicky, but big minutes the last 2 games, big production, should be on rosters. Precious Achiuwa should be on rosters for now. We had the update on the Knicks yesterday, and we heard Shams say that 2 to 3 weeks for OG Anunoby. The update to me on Julius Randle was not good. The fact that they were like, well, the return time frame for Randle is unclear. What they said was, we've got a clear timetable on OG Anunoby, not so much for Randle. And they said the hope is that he still comes and plays this season. That's bad, right? And I'll tell you why that's bad, because that's not saying he's ramping up to return. It's saying, well, maybe he comes back. And they might play into the middle of May, the Knicks. So if you're like, I don't know if he's going to be back by the middle of May, they might play to June. Probably won't if he's not there. But if they're not sure he's going to be back in May, he's not coming back in a week. He's out for a while here. And we know that they were trying to rehab it and see what happened without surgery, but that's bad news. Now, that could also be changed at any point. But again, that, like, the determination is play or not versus like 1 or 2 weeks. That's a big difference. And I don't really think that got mentioned many places. So I went and I watched it last night. So that's bad, man. Like, that's not good. So Achua's value is there. Now, it will drop a little bit when OG returns, but I think Randall is out. I think he's out for fantasy playoffs, honestly. That's how it reads to me. And the other one is Nick Richards. Mark Williams is not coming back. I'm pretty confident with that. Now, Richards also had a stinking game last game. But he had 20 and 10 the game before that? He won't be for every team. He is not a high upside player. But he's strong enough to remain a top 100 sort of a guy. Field goals, field goal percentage, blocks, rebounds, double-digit points. It's there. It's fine. It's not going to blow you away. But the role is not really going anywhere for him at all, I don't think. For points leagues, a lot of the same names for the must rosters. Marvin Bagley's there. He's rostered in only 51% of leagues at the moment. Trey Mann, Ayo Dosunmu, Precious Achiuwa, we talked about them already. The last two names on this list are better in points leagues than category leagues, and that's Greg Jackson II, who is going to get opportunities for Memphis, obviously, but he's going to have some horrendous games. You can roster him in category leagues, understanding what the problem's going to be with both percentages and sometimes a lack of peripheral stats. But for points leagues, the volume should be able to, it will offset that because percentages don't count in default Yahoo leagues. And the other one is Keontae George, who I do think is a must roster guy in category leagues. He doesn't rank quite as high in a category projection as he does in points leagues. They're just going to continue to give him the ball a lot in Utah, give him a lot of minutes, and that will continue to grow as guys disappear from the rotation. Keontae just remains a must roster guy, understanding there are going to be issues with his shooting at times. And it's going to be a slower process, and that's okay. You might not think it's okay, but I believe it's okay. So Keontae George must roster in points and must roster in categories, higher priority there in points leagues. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Our partners over at eBay Motors have teamed up with me all season to bring you the best fantasy picks each week. So when you're looking across the waiver wire to get your team ready for the fantasy playoffs, we're going to help get you the players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. Now, Keontae George, I'll just talk about him because that spot is his. He is not losing that starting point guard job in Utah unless there is an injury. They're giving him 32, 33 minutes a night, regardless of the score. They will continue to give him usage opportunities, assist opportunities, and even games where he has a bad first half, like yesterday. He scored 0 points. He ended up with 14 second half points. He got good assists. He's going to develop. He's clearly their best. I saw someone that said that the Jazz's best prospect at point guard is actually Jason Preston. I don't think I've laughed harder in my life. But anyway, Keontae George is clearly their best point guard, and he's going to get ample run here down the stretch, and he just should be on rosters to see where this goes. So finding that player that helps you win your fantasy championship, it's key, right? We get the right guys that fit, and eBay Motors knows that a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit, and it's the same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure that your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever it is that your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber and not cash. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to US customers, eligible items only, and exclusions apply. Okay, let's talk about droppable guys.
Get that garbage out of here!
What do we mean by droppable? Do you have to drop them? Nah. Should you drop them? Maybe. Can you drop them? Yes. And I hope that distinction remains clear as we continue to do this show week upon week upon week. Let's go to Category League droppable guys. 6 guys that I just don't think are worth holding in standard formats. And if they're on your roster, you can probably move off them to get somebody else into stream. Number 1 there is Bojan Bogdanovic. His last game was pretty good, but remember who was out. Brunson and Hartenstein, along with Anunoby and Randall. And Robinson, who I don't know where Mitch Robinson's coming back either. But Bogdanovic was getting 20 minutes a night, 22 minutes a night. And when Brunson plays and when Hartenstein plays, there's just not enough there. and you can consider him a stream guy, but absolutely not a must-roster player, Boyan. Russell Westbrook. Just this is the honorary Russell Westbrook position on this list. Why are people holding him? Jollibee Jalen Green is next. He's 87% rostered. For a category league, it's just not good enough. Bad field goals, subpar free throws, steals, blocks low, assists, rebounds low, scoring low, minutes down, minutes variable. You can have him for certain individual things when you're looking for a point stream, but that's it. Like, just not a must-roster guy. And still rostered widely. Mark Williams, that's just not happening, guys. He's still rostered in over 60% of leagues. People are burning IL slots, apparently. The horse, Keldon Johnson, was really good last game. Don't care. For the totality of what he does, it's not enough to just plonk on your roster and consider an absolute hold. Now, again, for some of you, it will make sense. He will have some value on your team and you can use him. But I think if I looked at a lot of standard rosters and he was there, I'd go, okay, you can do better. I reckon you can stream that spotty and get 6 games out of that position. You're doing all right. And the last one's Wendell Carter Jr., who can be better, but he's not. So simple. We don't need to roster him. He's been a droppable guy for a few weeks now. He's appearing on my list here now. You can use him at times, but they sort of go back and forward with him at certain moments, and it's just not enough. Consistently not enough with not high enough upside for me to care that much. On the points side of things, a lot of the names that are similar there. We've got Bojan Bogdanovic. I've got Dan Gafford there in a points league situation. Very, very clear drop. Dan Gafford is in a points league.
Get that garbage out of here!
The reason I didn't include him on the category league list is I just had 6 other names I wanted to include. You could hold on to Gafford. I do get that. If he found 24 minutes a night, he probably would be a fringe 12-team league player. I just don't think that's going to happen. We haven't seen him get 20 minutes in 3 straight games. He played 7 minutes last game. That's not the norm. He'll play more than 7. But the path, it requires an injury to somebody. Now, today, Kleber is doubtful. So maybe Gafford gets a boost there. But as a longer-term guy, it's just hard. And as much as I really like Gafford and was big on drafting him around that 100 mark and had him on a lot of teams, it's one of those ones where he's sitting there and I've got him still on one of my rosters because I'm just like, I don't actually need to make a move right now. But he's very, like, as soon as something happens, he's gone. Like, that's how I'm viewing it. Mark Williams, yep, sure, drop. Wendell Carter, drop. Grayson Allen, definitely not dropping him in a category league. In a points league, the value's just not high enough to consider must roster. He might be 130th, 140th in a points league, which is fine, but it's not someone that you just have to have absolutely locked in. And the last one there is Onyeka Okongwu. Still 67% rostered, was playing really well. It's the toe injury, though. Like, I don't know when he's coming back. Capella looked better last game, and now he had the potential to sit in that starting spot, play well, and he was killing it, and then keep Capella on the bench rest of season. Now Capella's back, starting. Okongwu's got no timetable to return, so you just don't need to hold on to him, I don't think, in that sort of situation. Let's look across certain spots to see who the most added players have been over the last 48 hours. If we use our advanced metric over at Basketball Monster, the most added player has been Benedict Mathurin. He's up a whopping 36% because he had one of the best games of the season and his best game of his career last time out. I still don't fully trust that Mathurin's going to be this guy who's getting steals and assists and rebounds and shooting efficiently because he never has been. But the last 2 games for him have been good. And while Nesmith is out, it's helped him. He's been starting. What they do when Nesmith returns, do they still go Nesmith-Nembhard? Does Mathurin start over Nembhard? Does Mathurin's minutes drop to 25? I don't know. But for now, people are adding him, and that's okay. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope up 14%. I talked about this yesterday, I think it was, on the daily preview show. We don't look at KCP as a must-roster player at all. But the Nuggets have got this nice little stretch coming up. One of the only teams, I think there's only 2 teams that play Wednesday, Thursday back-to-back. It's them and the Lakers. So yes, this is when you use him. They've got 3 games in 4 nights. Yes, this is when you do it. Up 14%. Norm Powell up 13%. With Paul George out, he started the last game. He was really good there. Absolutely in on that. What about the Prestige Penis? Grade A Dick. He is up 6,000 ads. He's now to 13% rostered. Dick still has a few things in front of him that he hasn't quite been able to get into the main or the starting lineup or the big 30-minute a night role. It's not quite there yet for Dick. I think we will get there. We saw Bruce Brown play like 17 minutes last game. Gary Trent is still there. At some point, they've got to go like, we know Trent's not it, yeah, so like let's see what we can do with our Dick. But I don't know when that's going to be. He is in the luxury stash type territory who's giving us probably 14-team league value at the moment. But where do we get standard Dick? Like, when does that get there? I do think we're not far away. I think we're getting close. And if you wanted to add Dick, which people are, I get it. Trey Murphy up 5,211 team adds. CJ McCollum out helps. And then today, everyone's on the injury report. Zion, Murphy himself, CJ, Ingram. So who knows? On a healthy team, Trey is a borderline 12-team league player because he plays like 27 or so coming off the bench, and that's not enough. One of the guys gets hurt and he starts, then we get more interested. So a lot of people have added. We'll see whether that lasts. And then Terrence Mann up 5,000. No. Yes, I know Paul George is out, but I don't really have much interest in Terrence Mann in a 12-team format. He is so low upside to me that he'll have the occasional big game. And he did have like a 20-point game the other day. I just don't see that as a long-term, sustainable sort of situation for the big fella. But who's been dropped?
Get that garbage out of here!
Who have the most dropped players been over those last 48 hours? Number one is Benjamin Simmons, Melbourne legend, down 17%. He's still 56% rostered. Yeah, fine. Now, the problem here is the Nets play 5 games next week, but come on. Ben Simmons is not playing 5 games next week. And that's going to be one of those things where you look at with like even Cam Johnson. And the Nets have already done some resting shenanigans earlier this season. So who is actually going to play 5 games? Is Cam Thomas going to? Like, I feel like Dennis Schroeder probably will. I feel like Mikal Bridges will. He'll probably play them poorly, but he will. I think Claxton will, but there's a chance he only plays 4. But there's no way Simmons plays 5. He's playing off the bench because I think Kevin Ollie doesn't want to play him with Claxton. I don't know. The first game, that's all he wanted to do. Also, I think Kevin Ollie might be a really bad coach for the NBA, but we'll find out. Dropping Simmons, totally. Yes, move on. Simone Fontecchio, down 14%. It's just a points and threes streamer. Just chuck him into the Norman Powell, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway group of guys that you stream in for points and threes. With Isaiah Stewart back and the key to the franchise back in that lineup, Fontecchio's minutes are down, so you move on. Greg Jackson's down 13% as well. I do believe he's a must-roster points league guy. Categories, it's borderline, but people have cut bait. Amen Thompson down 3,000. I get it. I still believe Amen very clearly the best prospect on that team. Not the best player, that's Şengün. I don't really know if they'll ever turn it over this season to him over Van Vliet or Green. And the minutes have trended down 3 consecutive games for Amen Thompson. I think it's obvious that he should get more minutes, but it doesn't mean that it will happen or it will happen anytime soon. As with any of these ones, if you want to hold, you hold. All right, and if you want to see where it goes and you fully believe in Amen, and I do, but if you might be in I need a game, I can't deal with 2 points in 17 minutes from Amen Thompson, that's not going to work for me, then you can move on. Paul Reed's been dropped in a lot of leagues. Again, I understand the frustration. He was really bad last game. But to add an extra commandment to the tablet behind us, like when someone has a huge game and then you add them, you don't get credit for that game. When someone has a stinker and then you drop them, that doesn't get taken off your ledger. So while Reed was bad last game, he could very easily go 13 and 10, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 2 threes, 3 assists in this next game. He's done it many, many times. I wouldn't have been that quick to move on. And the other one is Grant Williams, who has turned back into Grant Williams. So he's okay to have, but absolutely not a must. And you can decide to move on with that one, I think, in most cases. Today's episode is also brought to you by Grammarly. Grammarly is your AI writing partner to help you communicate more effectively and efficiently so you can make a bigger impact at work. I've used Grammarly for a long time, 10 years probably, for articles that I write, player notes, show descriptions, all that sort of stuff. Yesterday, I was actually doing some editing and proofreading of some of my partner's work using Grammarly too. And one of the other things with Grammarly is it sends you emails at the week. Well done. You wrote more words than 95% of users. You incorporated these new words into your vocabulary. You do all this sort of stuff. It gives you like a nice little bit of an ego stroke, and we all love a stroke at times, and Grammarly can do that. Better writing also means a stronger impact. 95% of Grammarly users report that Grammarly helps them craft more impactful writing. It works across 500,000 apps and websites, and by understanding your writing and your context, Grammarly provides relevant and personalized suggestions. They also give you tone suggestions so you can navigate difficult situations in the work environment. So make a bigger impact at work with Grammarly. Sign up and download for free at grammarly.com/podcast. That is GRAMMARLY.com/podcast. Easier said, done. Okay, so we've looked at the most dropped players. Now it's time for us to look at the old hot players.
Happy birthday.
So who have been top 100 guys over the last week? And number one on this list is Bol Bol. He had that gigantic game last time out with no Beal and no Gordon. And I did preach caution about adding Bol, A, because the Suns didn't play for 3 straight days, and B, there was no Gordon and no Beal who would have to come back and play significant minutes. But now we're at Wednesday. Thursday is tomorrow. Shout out to calendars. And the Suns play 3 games in 4 nights. They have a weekend back-to-back. Frank Vogel has said, for I think the 3rd time this season, that Bol's going to be in the rotation. And of course, then he doesn't end up in the rotation long term. But he has said he'll remain in the rotation. He said he'll play the same role, which is also clearly a lie because he won't get 25 a night and have that usage, but whatever. So if you wanted to add Bol, this is a good time. His recent form has been good. Now you've got 3 games in 4 nights. Knock yourself out. Leaky Beasley's been top 100 over the last week. Cool. I don't trust it anywhere near long term, but he's hot at the moment. So you use him instead of a Fontecchio, instead of a Tim Hardaway. You get those points, threes, and steals in. You never want to trust it, but it's there. Jalen Suggs has been top 100. Still rostered in under 50% of leagues. Obviously he is better than Markelle Fultz at this point. They're using him as a point guard more, and I think he just should be rostered. Lamar Stevens. I don't trust the Memphis question marks at all. But Stevens had a really good shooting game last time out. There is going to be a situation at some point when Jaren is done. And do they like Lamar Stevens more than Santi Aldama? That is possible. But it's also possible that Stevens gets waived and they say, sorry, mate, I just want to try someone different. It's possible too. I don't think they will. I like adding Stevens in deeper formats, 14s probably. But he's on my 12-team stream radar for sure. TJ McConnell's been top 100 over the last week. With Neesmith out, that is helping him. But he's able to put up double-digit scoring, 6 to 7 assists, a steal, 2 steals. Good field goal percentage in 18 minutes. If he goes back to 12 minutes, that's hard to justify, but he's at least a 14-team league guy, maybe 12-teamer. And the last one there is Corey Kispert, who was great last time out. That was with no Avdia, though. How they utilize him, I'm not really sure, because Bilal was out as well. Because they've been starting Bilal, then they started Shamet, and Kispert started. But does Kispert get the job over Bilal? Probably not. I can see things ramping up for him and Kuzma sitting down at some point. Avdia moves to the 4, Kispert moves to the 3. Kispert's got some short-term stream value as a 25-minute guy with the potential that in 2 weeks that turns into a 30-minute role. So the recent production for him has been good, but it's been no Kispert, it's been no Bilal during that time, and that's helped him. But I don't mind adding him and sort of seeing where this goes and just keeping an eye on that, I think, because I think it might be time to get ahead of it. I think. Injury replacement time. So who are some guys who are getting a short-term boost because of players on their team being injured or maybe being injured? Let's go to Charlotte first. Cody Martin. The shooting numbers at times are whack. The usage is bad, but he can get assists and he can get steals and his minutes are pretty solid at the moment. Now, if LaMelo comes back, it's going to create a big problem, but I don't know if that'll happen. So I think Cody Martin's a pretty good LaMelo replacement and helps you in those certain categories. I've got 2 Blazers guys there, Dwop Reith and Jabari Walker. Reith only 3% rostered. I thought they would have jumped up a little bit more. Deodorant Ayton's injury, which was caused by a charge taken by Kevin Love, one of the worst things in the NBA, that just causes too many injuries. Just try to block the shot or do something instead of standing there causing injuries. It looked bad. Now, they said that he avoided a break, which is good, but I would not be shocked if we get the news, and I don't know at this point, but I wouldn't be shocked if we get the news that torn wrist ligaments, 2 months, season done for Ayton. I think we've got to be prepared for that eventuality. I think Reith will get the start. He started the second half. I think Jabari Walker will get boosted minutes. Deeper leagues will look at Ibu Baji. Reith can be frustrating. He can have some bad usage nights. He can have some low field goal percentage nights. He's not a shot blocker at all. But there are going to be guys that just filter out of that lineup. And again, getting ahead of it with Reith. And if you miss out on Reith and go slightly deeper, Jabari Walker, they're probably the 2 guys we look at there. With Vanderbilt out, with Wood out, even to a lesser extent with Vincent out, Rui Hachimura is getting more run. I like him more in points leagues and category leagues. And you can use him in those points leagues. And they've got the back-to-back coming up as well, which is interesting. So he's got at least a short-term bump there. I've got Kobe Bufkin on that list. Obviously, Trae Young is out. Bufkin played, I think, 11 minutes in the first one and then 20 in the second one. Yes, the second one was a 30-point blowout against the Jazz, but he crossed over with DeJounte Murray. So he didn't just play strictly backup point guard, and that's what you wanted to see. You worry a little bit about where the Hawks are headed and what they're going to do, but giving those extra minutes to Bufkin is interesting. This is more for deeper leagues, so in 20s and 18s, I'd add him. 16s, I'd probably add Bufkin as well, and the other leagues, it's more just a watch and wait and see scenario. And then back to Portland, the painter Matisse Thybulle, with no Scoot, with no Brogdon, with no Sharp, with who knows what's going to happen with Simons. They're giving 30 minutes to Thybulle at the moment. Now, he probably will score 4 points a game, but he might have 4 steals. He might have 4 blocks. There's enough value when he gets 30 minutes a night for at least us to consider him while Scoot and Brogdon are on the shelf. I don't know when Brogdon returns or if he returns. Scoot, I think, will, but we're at least 3 more games away from that. So for the time being, we can look to Thybulle to be that option for us. Lastly, let's just look at a bunch of other names, and by a bunch, I mean 6. 6 more names for us to talk about from a waiver wire perspective. Number 1, we go back to Utah and we talk about Taylor Hendricks, whose minutes are pushing up. He's locked into a 25-minute a night minimum. I think it'll push to 30 minimum soon. I think you'll see usage ramp up over the next 2 weeks. I think you will see 12. Let's say a peak average of Hendricks this season: 13, 9, 1.5 blocks, 1 steal, 1.5 threes. That's enough. We are in the situation where Hendricks is a 14-team must, I believe, and he's moving into 12-team territory. I've got Andre Drummond here, the big avocado, with Caruso in some doubt, with the fact they play the Cavs today. They crossed him over quite a bit last game as well. Drummond is not a must roster long-term, but while Caruso is dealing with his hamstring, which we don't know the severity of, yeah, we have him. I put Brandon Podziemski on this list. He's 48% rostered, and I put him on this list just to mention him. This is not, other names does not mean these are all must-add players. I think Podziemski is moving into being a drop. In a category league, he already has percentage deficiencies. The return of Chris Paul, I think, will hurt him, and it will take the top off the upside. Just not enough. Like, he's not going to get enough 33-minute games to consider a must-roster guy. So he moves. He wasn't quite on my droppable list, but he's basically there. So if you wanted to drop Podziemski, I do get that. I've got Royce O'Neal there. The same sort of thing that I talked about with Bol is that last game he was awesome with no Beal and with no Gordon. So he won't get that run, but they've got 3 games in 4 nights coming up starting on Thursday. He'll get like 25-ish, you would say, off the bench. And in 3 games in 4 nights, with the potential that Beal or Gordon sit some of them, that's fine. I'm going to talk about Quentin Grimes because I need to. He had first 2 games really good minutes. The second one barely played, or the third one barely played. And that's because Pistons franchise face Isaiah Stewart was back. And when you've got the chance to build everything around Isaiah Stewart, you know you always have to take that opportunity. So Grimes got really limited. I do think that there will be a time at some point moving forward, even though he's absolutely cooking at the moment, that Cade might sit a couple of games with his knee, and then Grimes will start, and we'll see what happens. I do think Grimes is a really good player. I don't think he's an ad in 10 or 12 or 14 team leagues, but he's a name to watch just in case some of the rotation decisions switch up. The last one is just deeper league fodder. It's Bryce Sensabaugh. And if we're going to talk about them bumping the minutes of Hendricks up, I think they're going to do it with Bryce as well. Bryce is 6'6", or 6'5", 6'6", can play a little bit of the 3, and they've got no one else who does that. I do think at some point, Lauri Markkanen will stop playing with an injury. Jordan Clarkson will stop playing. I think Sexton will at some point as well. I don't know when that is. It's probably after March 25th. But I think Sensabaugh is going to have a run where he has multiple 20-point games in a row and shoots well and adds some rebounds with his size. He's a terrible defender, but he's going to have a run. And it's just, again, sometimes these other names on this list is just to bring you awareness of a guy that has now stepped into the rotation, and there's always steps to this stuff. Not even considered. The team starts to trade away guys. They start to shift their focus. The Hendricks one went from no minutes at all to an 18-minute bench role to a 27-minute starting role in the space of 3 weeks. Sensabaugh has been from out of the rotation to 10 minutes in the bench, and then I think he played 15 last game. And at some point, it's going to go higher, I think. So you just got to have name awareness. If you've got deeper benches, just with the direction that team's heading, just think he's someone to keep an eye on. And that brings us to the end of the show. I didn't mention someone like a DeLon Wright because Wright played as a backup in Miami, and I think we see that when he gets, or if they have multiple injuries and you stream him in, but otherwise he's just not going to be relevant for most leagues. And there's going to be some other names there that I probably didn't talk about. Talked about like 50 names, I think. over the course of the show, but there's always going to be guys. And if there's someone else that you wanted to talk about, you can drop that in the comments below and I'll look at it and other people will comment on it as well. And we can have that discussion there also. Guys, hit that thumbs up if you've got thumbs. Just show us that you've got those thumbs by hitting that thumbs up. Subscribe, Operation 80K. Let's get it cracking. And guys, we're done here. Thank you so much for listening and for watching, everyone. See ya.